as of this weekend, we have surpassed our goal and raised over $750,000, an amazing accomplishment that we should all be proud of and will make a huge difference for so many Israeli families in need.
That's what it sounded like Sunday at an online party to mark the annual Walk for Israel in Toronto. The event came at the end of a Jewish Heritage Month like no other. With the recent surge and waves of anti-Semitic hatred spewed out across the world, and here in Canada too, it's all alarmed many Canadian Jews, especially the online and even some physical assaults. Now, a new book has been published, and the timing couldn't be more poignant. The book is called No Better Home, with a question mark, Jews, Canada, and the Sense of Belonging, published by the University of Toronto Press. Nearly 20 Canadian Jewish scholars try to answer the question, is Canada the best home for Jews? Their short answer is yes, but, and now in light of the recent events, some of the authors are worried.
I was in this book saying that for me it was the best home for me to be in Montreal. And all of a sudden I found myself wondering, where is my home? I thought, well, there's no place to hide for Jews.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Monday, May 31st, 2021. Welcome to the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. Is Canada the better home for Jews these days? It's the question being posed by the new book, which had its launch on Friday. Coming up, we'll hear from some of the contributors. But first, here's what's making news in Canada right now. A Toronto Liberal member of Parliament says she supports Canada's announcement Friday to give $25 million in relief money to help repair Palestinian infrastructure destroyed in the recent fighting with Israel. Canada will channel the money through UN agencies, including UNRWA and some NGOs. The U.S. is also doing this. Yara Sachs is the Israeli-Canadian politician who represents the York Centre riding with a large Jewish population. Most of the money will go to concrete things in Gaza, like fixing up buildings, and for food, hygiene, and psychological healing. Sachs says her office has been working for months to secure $5 million of the new money for what she calls peace-building initiatives, to help both sides get to know each other so they can work for a two-state solution and peace. And Montreal's Spanish and Portuguese synagogue hosted an online memorial Sunday for the 80th anniversary of the Farhud, the 1941 pogrom against Iraqi Jews that killed hundreds of Jewish people in Baghdad, destroyed 900 homes, and led to the decline and emigration of the 2,700-year-old Iraqi Jewish community.
I find it very difficult to imagine any place better than Canada to grow up as I did than, in Canada in the last 50 years or so.
When a bunch of scholars who look at Canadian Jewish topics, including the man you just heard, Professor Jeffrey Weidlinger, met at a conference back in 2017. It was during the year of the 150th anniversary of Canada as an independent country, and the result was a book which has just been published. The scholars looked at many themes to try to answer the question, what does it mean to belong as Jews in Canada? And is Canada a better home than, say, America or France or England? David Koffman is a York University professor who edited the book. He says the book's title raises a lot of questions.
The title is really meant just to be a point of departure, although I'm kind of happy for the provocative nature of it, that if there were no question mark, it would be a declaration. Canada is a better home. With a question mark, it doesn't cast doubt on it. It just invites a kind of set of questions about it. It's a way to get at many different senses of what it means to belong as Jews to Canada.
Professor Morton Weinfeld of McGill University weighs in on the yes side of the question. He says, on the whole, compared with other countries who also have large Jewish populations, Canada has been the better home than anywhere else outside Israel.
Jews in Canada were a very privileged and lucky group. And I looked at two types of measures. One is integration. How well are they integrated into the spaces of their surrounding society? Economic, political, what have you, right? And the other was Jewish identity retention, the vibrancy of Jewish culture. What are the elements of Jewish culture, languages, the usual suspects? I trotted them out, I looked at them, and I thought Jews in Canada, on balance, were doing very well.
For the 20,000 mainly Moroccan Jews who left their country and came to Canada between 1960 and 1980, Professor Yolande Cohen says Montreal and Canada was the better home.
So this is the case of most North African Jews who left their countries like I did to come first to Israel. So for them, there was no other home than Israel and Zionism. Most 80% of the Moroccan Jews went to Israel. And for the westernized fringes of these populations, they went either to France when they could get papers, or came the other bit of people came to Montreal and some to Toronto, mainly the Hispanics.
The book also says Jews should think about their role in the historic displacement of Indigenous First Nations from their territories. David Koffman says the idea of Canada as a better home for the 40,000 Holocaust survivors, and before them, for those who created the farming settlements in Western Canada, is a little more nuanced.
That asks us to kind of rethink the grand narrative of an immigrant community, of an immigration narrative, to recast it as not only an immigrant narrative, which it is, but also a narrative about colonialism, the forces that brought Jews and many other minorities to Canada, as of course the United States, as being part of a process of dislocation, of removing homes, of disrupting homes for the people who lived here.
Some critics say the book does have a few shortcomings, that it should have looked at the diversity of the Canadian Jewish experience more. For example, the late singer Leonard Cohen is discussed, but not Drake, arguably the most successful Jewish Canadian artist. The book also doesn't deal in depth with Canadian Jews and their relationship with Israel. But because of the latest violence in the Middle East that's flared up, the authors agree the question, No Better Home, is more relevant than ever. Here's Harold Troper. He wrote the landmark book on Canada's racism against Jews, None is Too Many, in conversation with a clearly rattled Yolande Cohen.
There is a very real sense of anxiety and questioning and re-examining Canada within the context even of that title that you lay out. We are at a I suspect at a very interesting juncture in the Canadian Jewish community today. I'm not exactly sure how to address those anxieties, but certainly we have to acknowledge that at this particular moment they're there.
I must say that the events of 2 weeks ago and last week in Côte-Saint-Luc and Hampstead in Montreal, of Jewish harassment, and part of my family lives in Côte-Saint-Luc, and they told me that they were ready to leave, and I was startled because
for where?
Israel. That is 30 or 40 years after they left Morocco. So here, we never had to speak about that. It was just like obvious that we were finally at home in Montreal. And all of a sudden, this, of course, we know as a historian, it's not all of a sudden. We know that anti-Semitism has been always there. But it seems to me that it becomes somehow normal to be anti-Semite. And that's what we were witnessing 2 weeks ago. So, of course, it came as a real shock. And at the same time, a realization that, yes, maybe I was in this book saying that for me, it was the best home for me to be in Montreal. And all of a sudden, I found myself wondering, where is my home? And I thought, well, there's no place to hide for Jews. And that's really my feeling today.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. Integrity, community, quality, and customer care. I'm Ellen Besner. You can reach me at ebesner@thecjn.ca. We'll end the episode with my interview with Yara Sachs, the Liberal MP for York Centre, on why Canada is spending $5 million to build dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians.
So I know we have done this before, and I think it is the time to do it now, because Israeli and Palestinian societies, they don't know each other anymore. They've been siloed. And we're never going to get to a two-state solution. We're never going to get to peace if we don't build those bridges between civil societies. If people don't know each other, how are they supposed to break that together and make peace with one another? And we need to do that work, and we need to tend to that part of the garden.